First Contact and Humiliation. The crystalline spires of Unity Station pierced the void of space like frozen lightning, its rotating rings casting shadows across the assembled fleet of Earth's finest vessels. Commander Elena Rivera stood at the observation deck, her dark eyes fixed on the approaching Zarkax warship that dwarfed humanity's largest cruiser. After 15 years of deep space exploration, humanity had finally made contact with an advanced civilization. The success or failure of this meeting would shape the future of human-alien relations. Elena straightened her midnight blue diplomatic uniform, checking her reflection in the reinforced glass. At 38, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had earned her position through merit rather than politics. Her silver-streaked black hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and the scars on her right cheek from a mining accident spoke of a life lived on humanity's frontier. "Commander, they're ready for you in the reception chamber," Lieutenant James Wong announced, his usually steady voice betraying a hint of nervousness. "Time to make history," Elena replied, offering a reassuring smile. "One way or another." The reception chamber was a marvel of human engineering, designed to accommodate various atmospheric conditions and gravitational preferences. Elena took her place at the center of the human delegation, flanked by scientists, military officers, and diplomatic corps members from Earth's United Nations Space Command. The Zarkax delegation entered with a display of power that bordered on theatrical. Their ceremonial armor gleamed under the chamber's lights, scales of various metallic hues shifting with each movement. Leading them was General Velthrak, nearly 8 feet tall with iridescent plates running down his spine and arms that ended in wickedly curved talons. "Welcome to Unity Station," Elena began, her universal translator working to convert her words into the clicking and whistling language of the Zarkax. "We are honored to—" "Silence," Velthrak interrupted, his translator rendering his voice in a harsh baritone. "You presume much, lesser being, to speak first in the presence of the Zarkax Dominion." Elena maintained her diplomatic smile, though her jaw tightened. "My apologies, General. We are still learning your customs." Velthrak circled her slowly, his head tilted in what she recognized as a predatory assessment. "Learning. Yes, that is what primitive species do best. Tell me, how long has your kind managed to achieve faster-than-light travel? A century? 2. 23 years, Elena answered honestly, knowing that lying would only make things worse. The chamber filled with clicking sounds that the translator identified as laughter. Velthrak's secondary eyes, set along his jawline, pulsed with amusement. 23 years. We had achieved interstellar travel when your ancestors were still discovering how to make fire. Elena felt the tension in the room rise. Behind her, Admiral Chen shifted his weight, a subtle sign of his growing anger. She gave him a warning glance before addressing Velthrak again. "Age brings wisdom, General. We hope to learn from those who have gone before us." "Learn?" Velthrak's primary eyes narrowed. "Perhaps you should learn your place first." He gestured to one of his subordinates, who activated a holographic display. "These are the territories of the Zarkax Dominion. Your species has been trespassing." Elena studied the map carefully. "Our surveys showed no signs of claimed territory in these regions." "Because you lack the technology to detect our marker buoys," Velthrak sneered. "Your ignorance does not excuse your transgression. The penalty for unauthorized expansion into Dominion space is typically immediate destruction of the offending colony." The human delegation erupted in protests, but Elena raised her hand for silence. "What do you propose instead, General?" Velthrak's mouth plates shifted into what might have been a smile. "Since you seem so eager to learn, you will submit to Dominion authority. Your colonies will be placed under our protection, and your species will serve as a protectorate of the Dominion." "That's outrageous." Admiral Chen burst out. "We won't be subjugated by your betters." Velthrak finished. "You already are. Your ships are outgunned, your technology is primitive, and your species is young. Accept our generous offer, or face extinction. Elena felt the weight of centuries of human history pressing down on her shoulders. How many times had this scene played out on Earth? How many civilizations had faced such choices? No, she said quietly. The chamber fell silent. Even Velthrak seemed taken aback by her directness. No, he repeated, looming over her. You dare refuse? We dare, Elena replied, her voice gaining strength. Humanity has faced extinction before, General. We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and our own near destruction of Earth. We've learned from each challenge, grown stronger, more resilient. If you want to test that resilience, you're welcome to try. Velthrak's talons clicked against the floor as he approached her, stopping mere inches away. You amuse me, human. Such bravado from such a fragile creature. Without warning, his hand shot out, grabbing Elena's arm and lifting her off the ground. See how easily you can be broken. Elena didn't struggle, didn't show fear. She met his gaze steadily, even as her shoulder threatened to dislocate. If you're trying to prove your superiority, General, you're only proving your insecurity. The word struck home. Velthrak dropped her roughly, his scales flushing with anger. You will learn respect, human. Guards, take her. The rest of you will witness what happens to those who defy the Dominion. As the Zarkak's guards approached, Elena straightened her uniform with dignity. She caught Lieutenant Wong's eye and gave a subtle nod. The young officer understood immediately, Protocol Omega was now in effect. If she didn't return in 24 hours, Earth would know diplomacy had failed. Remember this moment, General, Elena said as the guard seized her. It may not teach the lesson you intend. Velthrak watched her being led away, his expression unreadable. He didn't realize that this moment would indeed become a lesson, but not for humanity. Hidden strengths. The holding cell aboard the Zarkak's flagship was a masterpiece of intimidation. Walls that seemed to breathe, pulsing with an otherworldly energy that made Elena's skin crawl. She sat cross-legged on the floor, her diplomatic uniform now wrinkled and stained, but her posture remained proud. 12 hours had passed since her imprisonment, and she'd spent every minute studying her surroundings. The Zarkak's guards watched her through the energy barrier, clearly puzzled by her calm demeanor. They expected tears, pleading, or at least pacing. Instead, Elena appeared to be meditating, though her mind was racing with observations and calculations. Something about the cell's walls bothered her. The pulsing wasn't regular, it followed a pattern that seemed almost familiar, like a half-remembered song. She'd noticed it the moment they threw her in here, but now, in the quiet hours of her confinement, the pattern was becoming clearer. A sharp hiss announced General Velthrak's arrival. Still maintaining your dignity, human. How admirable. And futile. Elena opened her eyes slowly. The pattern in these walls, it's a language, isn't it? Velthrak's secondary eyes flickered in surprise before he could mask it. You're hallucinating. The stress must be affecting your primitive mind. No, Elena said, standing smoothly. It's subtle, but it's there. The walls are talking. The question is, what are they saying? Impossible, Velthrak snarled. These cells were designed by the Ancient Ones themselves. No species besides the Zarkaks has ever decoded their messages. Elena walked to the wall, her fingers hovering just above its surface. It's beautiful, actually. The way the energy flows, it's like watching thoughts form. This section here, she pointed to a particularly complex pattern, it's talking about containment, but not just physical containment. It's about containing something vast. Something dangerous. The general's composure cracked. He deactivated the energy barrier and stormed into the cell, grabbing Elena by the throat. What are you? How can you read this? I don't know, Elena managed to say despite his grip. But I'm not the first human to see patterns where others see chaos. It's kind of our specialty. Before Velthrak could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. He released Elena, his scales shifting to a darker shade as he received information through his neural link. "Impossible," he whispered. "What's happening?" Elena asked, rubbing her throat. "The containment systems, they're failing. All of them. Across every Zarkax vessel in the fleet." He turned to her, his expression a mixture of fury and fear. "What did you do?" "Nothing," Elena said, then her eyes widened as she looked at the wall patterns again. "But I think I know what's happening. Your ancient ones, they built these ships as more than just warships, didn't they? They're prisons, containing something your people don't even remember anymore." The ship shuddered violently, throwing them both against the wall. The pulsing patterns were accelerating now, their glow intensifying. Elena's mind raced as she processed the changing symbols. "Listen to me," she said urgently. "I can read what's happening, but I need access to your ship's central systems. Whatever your ancestors locked away, it's waking up. And why should I trust you?" Velthrak demanded, though there was uncertainty in his voice. "Because right now, I'm the only one who can read the warning signs. Your ancestors left instructions, General. Instructions your people have forgotten how to read." Another violent tremor rocked the ship. Velthrak's neural link buzzed with desperate communications from other vessels. His secondary eyes pulsed rapidly as he processed the information. "If you're lying," he said finally, "I will personally ensure your death is remembered as a warning to all other species." "And if I'm right," Elena countered, "you might have to remember this as the day a human saved your fleet." Velthrak led her through corridors that writhed with the same energy patterns as her cell. To Elena's eyes, the entire ship was alive with ancient messages, screaming warnings that had gone unheeded for millennia. They reached the bridge, where chaos reigned. Zarkax officers rushed between stations, their usual military precision shattered by mounting panic. "The containment fields are cascading," an officer reported. "We're detecting energy signatures unlike anything in our database." Elena stepped forward, her eyes scanning the holographic displays. The patterns she'd seen in her cell were repeated here on a massive scale, flowing through every system on the ship. There, she pointed to a particular sequence. "That's not a warning, it's a key. Your ancestors didn't just build prisons, they built failsafes." "Explain," Velthrak commanded. "The Ancient Ones knew this might happen. They left instructions, a way to reinforce the containment fields. But it requires something they knew the Zarkax would never think to try." She turned to face the general. "It requires asking for help." "What?" "The failsafe needs two species working in harmony, one to command, one to interpret. Your ancestors knew that true strength lies in cooperation, not domination. They built this limitation into their technology as a lesson for future generations." The ship groaned as another containment field failed. Velthrak's scales rippled with conflicting emotions as he faced the ultimate challenge to his species' pride. "If you're wrong, then we all die anyway," Elena finished. "But if I'm right, this becomes the moment when humans and Zarkax took their first step towards something greater than either of us." Velthrak stared at her for a long moment, his ancient pride warring with survival instinct. Finally, he nodded. "What do you need?" "Direct neural interface access to your ship's systems, and your trust. Even if what I ask seems impossible." As Velthrak's officers rushed to comply, Elena allowed herself a small smile. Sometimes the greatest victories came not from defeating an enemy, but from showing them a better path. She just hoped they'd live long enough to walk it. The rising storm. The bridge of the Zarkax flagship hummed with an energy that set everyone's teeth on edge. Elena stood at the central console, her hands hovering over the neural interface as streams of ancient data flowed through her consciousness. The sensation was overwhelming, like trying to drink from a fire hose of information that threatened to drown her. "The containment fields are at 30% and falling," a Zarkax officer reported, their usual confidence replaced by barely concealed panic. Velthrak watched Elena with his primary eyes while his secondary ones monitored the ship's status displays. Whatever you're going to do, human, do it now. It's not that simple, Elena said through gritted teeth. These systems weren't designed to be rushed. The Ancient Ones built safeguards within safeguards. Her fingers traced patterns in the air, following flows of energy only she could see. There's something else here, something deeper. The ship shuddered violently, and warning klaxons blared across all decks. Through the viewport, Elena could see other vessels in the fleet beginning to pulse with the same ominous light that had started in her cell. General. Lieutenant Wong's voice came through on an emergency channel from Unity Station. We're detecting massive energy fluctuations from your fleet. Our sensors indicate. This doesn't concern you, human, Velthrak snapped, but Elena raised her hand. Let him finish. Wong continued, our quantum sensors are picking up something our standard equipment missed. There's some kind of dimensional tear forming inside your containment fields. Elena's eyes widened. That's it. Your ancestors weren't just building prisons, they were holding back a breach in reality itself. Impossible, Velthrak growled, but his scales had darkened with concern. Our records speak of weapons and creatures, not. Think about it, Elena interrupted. Why would a civilization as advanced as the Ancient Ones need such elaborate containment systems for mere weapons? They found something out there in the dark between stars, something that threatened the fabric of spacetime itself. The neural interface surged with new information, and Elena gasped as understanding flooded her mind. Images of an ancient war flashed before her eyes, not against enemies of flesh and blood, but against tears in the universe itself, wounds in reality that leaked chaos into ordered space. The Ancient Ones found a way to seal these breaches, she explained, her voice tight with concentration. But they couldn't destroy them. So they built ships, entire fleets, to serve as mobile containment units. The Zarkax inherited these vessels, but over the millennia, you forgot their true purpose. If what you say is true, Velthrak said, his voice uncharacteristically quiet, why are the breaches becoming active now? Before Elena could answer, space itself seemed to ripple around the fleet. Through the viewport, they watched in horror as reality began to fold and unfold like origami made of starlight and darkness. Because they're drawn to consciousness, Elena whispered, the knowledge flowing through her from the ancient systems. Specifically, to minds that believe they understand everything. The Ancient Ones discovered that absolute certainty, absolute pride in one's superiority, creates resonance patterns that the breaches can latch onto. Velthrak's secondary eyes pulsed rapidly as he processed this. Are you suggesting that your absolute conviction in Zarkak's superiority has been like a beacon to these things, Elena confirmed. That's why the Ancient Ones built the failsafe to require cooperation. Humility and the recognition of our own limitations are the strongest shields against these breaches. The ship's AI chimed in with increasingly desperate warnings as more containment fields began to fail. Through the neural interface, Elena could feel the barriers between dimensions growing thinner by the second. We need to link all ship systems, she said urgently. Not just Zarkax vessels, human ships too. The more diverse the minds working together, the stronger the containment field will be. Velthrak straightened to his full height, his pride warring with necessity. You ask me to put the safety of my fleet in the hands of primitives. I'm asking you to acknowledge that different perspectives, different ways of thinking, might be exactly what we need right now. Elena met his gaze steadily. Your ancestors understood this. That's why they built these failsafes the way they did. Another dimensional ripple rocked the ship, and for a moment, everyone on the bridge caught a glimpse of what lay beyond the breaches, geometries that shouldn't exist, colors that had no names, and things that moved in ways that made the mind recoil. General, Elena said softly, sometimes the greatest strength lies in admitting we don't have all the answers. Velthrak was silent for a long moment, his scales shifting through patterns that reflected his internal struggle. Finally, he activated his neural link. This is General Velthrak to all vessels, Zarkax and human alike. By my authority, you will initiate emergency link protocols. Follow the human Elena Rivera's instructions precisely. Elena felt a surge of relief, but there was no time to celebrate. Through the neural interface, she began guiding both fleets through the complex process of linking their systems. Human intuition and creativity melded with Zarkax's precision and power, creating something entirely new. As the ship's systems synchronized, Elena saw something remarkable. The ancient patterns weren't just instructions, they were a blueprint for something greater than mere containment. The Ancient Ones hadn't just been trying to prevent disaster, they'd been trying to teach future generations the most important lesson of all: no species, no matter how advanced, could face the universe's greatest challenges alone. But even as the combined fleets began working in harmony, Elena sensed that this was just the beginning. The dimensional breaches were growing stronger, more numerous. What they'd contained so far was merely the advance guard of something far more terrible. She looked at Velthrak, seeing in his expression that he'd reached the same conclusion. This wasn't just about saving their ships anymore. This was about saving reality itself, and they would need every ounce of human ingenuity in Zarkax's might to face what was coming. Unlikely alliance. Reality twisted and buckled around the combined fleet as Elena worked frantically at the neural interface. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she processed the ancient data streaming through her consciousness. The dimensional breaches were growing exponentially, each one tearing new holes in the fabric of space-time. "Status report," Velthrak commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. "The linked containment fields are holding at 60%, Elena reported, her fingers dancing through holographic displays. "But we're losing ground. These breaches, they're learning, adapting to our defenses." Through the viewport, space itself seemed to fold and unfold like dark origami. Stars disappeared behind veils of impossible geometries, while others appeared where none had existed before. The combined human and Zarkax fleet held formation, their ship's energy fields creating a web of light against the encroaching darkness. Lieutenant Wong's voice crackled through the calm. "Unity Station sensors are detecting more ruptures forming. Whatever's on the other side, it's trying to push through." Elena nodded grimly. The Ancient One's records are becoming clearer. These aren't just random tears in space-time, they're being created deliberately. There's something out there, something that feeds on ordered reality itself. How does one fight such an enemy? Velthrak asked, his secondary eyes pulsing with barely contained anxiety. Before Elena could answer, a massive breach opened directly ahead of the fleet. Through it, they caught glimpses of what lay beyond, a realm of pure chaos where the laws of physics were more like suggestions. Tentacles of void reached out, probing the containment fields. "All ships, hold formation," Velthrak commanded. "Divert emergency power to the linked fields." Elena's fingers flew across the interface as she integrated the new power flows. "It's not enough," she said through gritted teeth. "We need something more than just raw energy. The Ancient One's records mention a final protocol, but... But what? But it requires something that might be impossible. Total synchronization between all crews, human and Zarkax alike. Not just our systems, but our minds." Velthrak's scales rippled with disbelief. "You expect my people to link minds with humans? I expect both our species to overcome their prejudices if they want to survive," Elena shot back. "The Ancient Ones discovered that consciousness itself can affect reality. Our divisions, our certainties about our own superiority, they're what's making us vulnerable. We need to achieve true unity." Another breach opened, then another. The void tentacles were becoming more aggressive, probing for weaknesses in their defenses. A Zarkax cruiser on the outer edge of the formation shuddered as its containment field buckled. "We're losing the Korth Val," an officer reported. Without hesitation, two human ships broke formation to support the struggling cruiser, their fields interconnecting to reinforce its defenses. The Zarkak's crew's surprise at this sacrifice was palpable. "You see," Elena said softly to Velthrak. "This is what the Ancient Ones were trying to teach us. True strength lies in our willingness to support each other, even at our own risk." Velthrak watched as more human ships moved to protect their Zarkak's counterparts, while Zarkak's vessels adjusted their formation to better shield the more vulnerable human craft. His expression shifted, scales taking on a new pattern Elena hadn't seen before. "What must we do?" he asked finally. Elena's hands moved to a new configuration on the neural interface. "We need to link all crews through the Ancient One systems. Not just for coordination, but for true understanding. Every mind working as one, while maintaining their unique perspectives. The crew will resist," Velthrak warned. "Then lead by example," Elena challenged. "Show them that even a Zarkak's general can adapt, can learn to see strength in differences." The ship shuddered as another breach formed, larger than any before. Through it, they could see vast shapes moving, entities of pure chaos preparing to cross over. The containment fields flickered ominously. Velthrak straightened to his full height. "This is General Velthrak to all ships. Prepare for total neural synchronization. Today, we prove that the greatest victory lies not in dominating others, but in learning to work as one." Elena felt tears in her eyes as she watched the proud general humble himself before his entire fleet. Through the neural interface, she could sense the shock rippling through both human and Zarkak's crews, followed by something else, hope. Initiating synchronization, she announced, her fingers moving in complex patterns. "Everyone, open your minds. Don't fight the connection. Let it flow naturally." The sensation was overwhelming as hundreds of minds, human and Zarkak's alike, began to merge through the Ancient One systems. Elena felt their fears, their pride, their prejudices, and beneath it all, their shared desire to protect what they held dear. Velthrak gasped as the connection took hold. For the first time, he truly understood how humans saw the universe, their curiosity, their adaptability, their fierce determination to overcome any obstacle. And humans experienced the Zarkak's perspective, their deep sense of tradition, their pride in their achievements, and their hidden fear of becoming obsolete in a changing galaxy. Through their combined consciousness, Elena saw the Ancient One's final protocol with perfect clarity. It wasn't just about containing the breaches, it was about proving that different species could overcome their divisions to face a common threat. As their minds synchronized, the containment fields began to pulse with new energy. The light of hundreds of consciousnesses working in harmony pushed back against the encroaching void. But even as they gained ground, Elena sensed that this was just the beginning of an even greater challenge. The true test wasn't just surviving this crisis, it was maintaining this newfound unity in the face of what was yet to come. As human ingenuity merged with Zarkak's power, Elena realized they were creating something entirely new, a blueprint for a future where cooperation replaced conquest. But first, they had to survive the next few minutes, as the largest breach yet began to form directly ahead of their fleet. The final testament. The massive breach loomed before the combined fleet like a wound in reality itself, its edges writhing with impossible colors and geometries that hurt to look at. Through the neural link connecting all crews, Elena could feel the shared fear and determination of both humans and Zarkaks. They had come so far from their first hostile meeting, and now everything hung in the balance. "Energy signatures are off the charts," Lieutenant Wong reported from Unity Station. "Whatever's coming through, it's bigger than anything we've seen." Elena stood at the neural interface, her mind connected to hundreds of others through the Ancient One's technology. Beside her, Velthrak's scales shifted with patterns that reflected the combined emotions of their linked consciousness. The proud general who had once seen humans as primitives now stood as their equal, sharing in their thoughts and feelings. "The final protocol is ready," Elena announced, her voice steady despite the strain. "But there's something you all need to know." She took a deep breath. This isn't just about containing the breaches anymore. The Ancient Ones, they left us a way to seal them permanently. Through their shared consciousness, she felt the ripple of surprise and hope. But there was a cost, there was always a cost. The protocol requires a direct neural connection to the breach itself, she continued. Someone has to guide the combined energy of our fleets into the very heart of chaos. And whoever does it. She left the sentence unfinished, but everyone understood through their linked minds. No, Velthrak said firmly. You've done enough, Elena. I will. It has to be me, she interrupted. The Ancient Ones designed this failsafe for someone who could see patterns others couldn't. Someone who could bridge different ways of thinking. They were waiting for someone like me. The truth of her words resonated through their shared consciousness. Elena had been the first to read the ancient messages, the first to understand that strength came from unity rather than dominance. She was the bridge between species that the Ancient Ones had foreseen. There must be another way, Velthrak insisted, and Elena felt his genuine concern for her safety, something that would have been unthinkable just days ago. There isn't. But this was never about survival. Elena smiled sadly. It was about proving that different species could overcome their prejudices and work together. We've already won the real victory, everything else is just details. Through the viewport, they watched as the breach widened further. Vast shapes began to emerge, beings of pure chaos that defied description, their very existence threatening to unravel the fabric of spacetime. All ships, maintain the containment field, Elena commanded. Focus your energy through the flagship. And, remember this moment. Remember what we achieved together. Before anyone could stop her, Elena deepened her connection to the neural interface. Her consciousness expanded, guided by the Ancient One's protocols, reaching out toward the breach itself. She felt Velthrak's mind alongside her own, supporting her, lending her strength. Through their linked minds, she shared one last message: the universe is too vast and wonderful for any one species to face alone. Never forget that. Then she pushed her consciousness into the breach. The sensation was indescribable, like being everywhere and nowhere at once, seeing every possibility that ever was or could be. The chaos entities recoiled from her approach, sensing something they had never encountered before: unified consciousness, multiple species working as one. Elena became a conduit for the combined power of both fleets. Through her, human creativity merged with Zarkak's strength, creating something entirely new. The Ancient One's final protocol activated, using this unified energy to begin sealing the breach. The chaos entities fought back, sending waves of unreality that threatened to tear her mind apart. But Elena wasn't alone. Through the neural link, she felt the support of hundreds of minds, human and Zarkak's alike, each lending her their strength. In that moment, she understood why the Ancient Ones had built their failsafes this way. It was never about the technology, it was about proving that different species could overcome their divisions to achieve something greater than themselves. With one final surge of unified energy, Elena completed the protocol. The breach began to close, reality knitting itself back together. The chaos entities screamed in frequencies that shattered sensors across the fleet, but they could not prevent their exile from our universe. As the breach sealed, Elena felt her consciousness being pulled back, not by the protocol, but by the combined will of hundreds of minds refusing to let her go. She had expected to be sacrificed, but she had underestimated the strength of the bonds they had formed. Elena awoke in the flagship's medical bay, surrounded by both human and Zarkak's medical staff. Velthrak stood nearby, his scales showing patterns of relief and respect. "You succeeded," he said simply. "All breaches are sealed, permanently this time." "We succeeded," Elena corrected weakly. "All of us, together." Velthrak nodded, then did something unprecedented. He lowered himself to meet her eye level, a gesture of equality that would have been unthinkable before. "The Zarkaks have much to learn about true strength," he admitted. Perhaps we could start by establishing a permanent cooperation between our species." Elena smiled. I think that's exactly what the Ancient Ones were hoping for. In the days that followed, as Elena recovered and diplomatic relations were formalized, the story of how humans and Zarkax united to save reality itself spread throughout both civilizations. But the real miracle wasn't the sealing of the breaches, it was the barriers that had been broken between two species who had started as enemies and emerged as allies. The Ancient Ones had left behind more than just technology and warnings. They had left a test, a chance for younger species to prove they could overcome their prejudices and work together. In facing that test, humanity and the Zarkax had not only saved their universe, they had taken their first steps toward a future where cooperation replaced conquest, and understanding trumped fear. As Elena stood on Unity Station's observation deck weeks later, watching human and Zarkax ships working together to establish new protocols and safeguards, she realized that the Ancient Ones had been right. The greatest threats to civilization were never external, they were the barriers we built between ourselves. And the greatest victories came not from dominating others, but from learning to see the strength in our differences.